What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the babbling techno philosopher here, and we're back with episode 63 of the video game therapy series. It has been quite some time. I have had to deal with life's stuff, so I haven't quite had the time to do one of these, or I really just haven't been in the location in which I can do one of these. So I am teaming, if you will, with ideas, thoughts, random, I don't even know, that all of which need to be shared with the void. So that is, I was very adamant on blocking off some time today to babble about nothing. So here we are. Anyway, also, if I seem a bit weird, I guess, within the game, I purchased a monitor arm for myself. And I moved the monitor much closer to me than it's used to be. So it's obviously a better positioning for my neck, but it seems everything seems super close and strange. So if it looks like I'm drunk inside the game, I'm not. I'm adjusting to a new monitor setup. But anyway, enough with the logistic stuff. Let's get into the nothing topics. So yeah, let's see. I'm already, it's not like I'm drawing a blank. I'm not really sure where to start. Something society-wise, of course, most of my babblings have to do with society because I'm in it. I suppose if I were secluded, I mean, ironically, most of my stuff might be about how I'm not in society, but I'm not secluded, so I'm in society and I participate in certain things. And it seems to me, and I don't know if this is a kind of a no-duh observation or what, but we are very much, I'll say obsessed. I think that's a word that I'm allowed to use in this contest. Obsessed with utility. Now, obviously, a primary measure of utility is money because it is kind of universally useful. Right? There's not really scenarios in which money would be useless, I guess, unless you were in a gunfight with somebody or you needed to eat and you just had money and no one was going to sell you anything. But in 99.99% of circumstances in modern life, money is kind of the ultimate form of being useful. And it's kind of one problem already to kind of, what the heck, associate an individual's value with their utility to you. Now, it might seem like pragmatic to do so, but certainly there are indescribable and non-monetizable aspects of any given human or set of humans or whomever, under which there is no monetary value. And even to a wider extent, if we're going to abstract a little further, to a utility extent, I'm not saying there are people that are useless, but in many contexts, there are people that are useless to you. And because utility and even money in this certain sense only matters to those buying and selling certain things, it to some extent impacts you whether or not you are seen as useful or, I don't know, as utility, as a tool of some kind, whether that be money or not. Money just seems to be the most obvious, but I even see this within relationships where, like corporate networking events. Everyone kind of has at least been to one of these before. But if you got a janitor and Elon Musk, you're obviously not going to spend any time talking to a janitor, unless being a janitor was your dream job, which more power to you. But regardless, you're tantalized by the utility of said relationship with Elon Musk, and you're probably going to spend the whole time begging him for a job. And you wouldn't spend any time talking to the janitor. And it's not because he's inherently a worse human, because you would have no idea. You just kind of judge them based off of their occupation, but they are of no utility to you, at least perceived utility. And my whole argument around this, not really argument, my whole thought around this is that obviously, like, the perception of utility is flawed, right? There are I assume musical pieces that people have produced that are would be or are actually, I guess, in maybe a abstract sense, very useful, but their perceived value is nothing, because they're not made by somebody famous or whatever, versus, famous people push out these cash grabs all the time, and those are still seen as multitudes times more useful than some indie person, only because it's a famous person's thing, but they're not really inherently more valuable. And it gets really, really hard, even especially when talking about anything related to art. So maybe I'll try to stay away from that area of things. But even so, there's I think relationships is a very sobering and or potentially problematic area in which we seem to view things through a utility lens. Like I read books and read all kinds of books about stuff. And this wasn't even just mentioned in the books. I've just read excerpts in various blogs that cite books. But one big piece of, I guess, like self-help advice in these self-help books. I don't frequent these books. I don't tend to like those very much. But they talk about your friends. Like if you're not surrounded by, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you just view your friends as utilities, as tools, if you will, of whether or not they're useful, then you're kind of a shithead if you're just going to throw people out because they're not valuable. Because, now regardless of whether or not they're good or bad influences, most of that judgment is based off of money. And sure, you can make the argument that, your friend Chris or whatever is actually a bum and there's no reason for you to spend time with him. And you should stop spending time with him to make yourself better or whatever. But it's a vacuous assumption to think that he's automatically a bum because he doesn't, has as a useful job as you, and you need to go be friends with hedge fund people or whatever. I think there's just certain indiscriminate, invaluable, at least not invaluable, but not able to, the value is not able to be calculated in certain relationships. That is a function of randomness and spontaneity and just time even. And ditching all that for utility I think is a bad thing. So it's not that I'm anti-utility. I'm not anti-money, I guess, in some sense. I think money as a concept is great. It's kind of a permanent store of value, at least a pseudo-permanent store of value. And it's a universally good and durable store of value. I guess durable for as long as you can keep the cash or gold or whatever it is that you're storing the money in. But I'm not against currency as an idea. I just think if we continue down a path where socially, again, I'm speaking about society here, we only view things through a lens of utility, and we kind of ignore maybe the more what I would call human parts, imperfect, hypocritical, kind of spontaneous parts of humanity and our nature and our creations. We'll lose ourselves. And I guess the ironic saying with this is that we have chatbots that are trying more and more to be more and more like humans, but we have humans that are treating themselves more and more like machines, right? Or kind of just a machine to get, put in the X calories and sleep XYZ to work this much and then work in this, it's like you're trying to kind of mechanize your workflow and all this other stuff when a certain amount, we're not really designed. I don't want to make the biological argument here because I think the biological argument, obviously we're not designed to sit in an office chair for 40 hours a week. But that's kind of a trivial argument. I think, more abstractly, we're not, it's inhuman to try and become a machine. Why'd you and I get the appeal, right? It's, some of it's about making money and hustling and doing whatever. Even creative pursuits can kind of try to be mechanized in some way to make it replicable. But there's a certain, I don't know, I feel like that's ignoring a large part of our innate humanity in exchange for a semblance of robotic behavior, which it seems like a very, a very dumb, it's not a worthwhile trade. I'm not trading that, and I guess that's just kind of my view of it. But the irony is that we have machines that are trying more and more to be more human, and we have humans that are trying to treat their bodies and their minds as machines when they're not. I feel guilty a certain amount of time because I am easily distracted. You can armchair psychologist, diagnose you with whatever you want, even whatever. But I kind of have to stop getting angry at myself for being distracted or getting fixated on something weird, or kind of quote unquote wasting time in some ways. And there's one, and I'm not saying I don't believe in wasted time. I think Netflix alone or watching YouTube videos blindlessly is wasted time. I'm not arguing against that, but I think like for example, I spent, I don't know, probably several hours like configuring different settings and things on my Minecraft launcher. I spent hours configuring stuff on my computer. I spent hours organizing files that I'm never going to look at again. And sure, some of that is like wasted time in the sense I'm not doing something that's making any money or is productive or whatever. But a certain amount of that I did those things because it was interesting to me, and I had the motivation at that time to do it. And now you could, I guess the person looking for utility would see, well, there's no utility in this action, so you shouldn't do it. But again, at that point, you're kind of treating yourself like a robot, in the sense that you're just giving yourself instructions and you're going to do whatever you tell yourself to do, which I'm saying I'm as guilty of that as anybody. In fact, I think I'm probably worse than most people in terms of treating myself like shit because I'm not being as robotic and as productive and efficient as a robot. I'm not a fucking robot. I feel like, and then why are we trying to act like robots, right? We're humans, right? To be human is to be a hypocrite, is to be spontaneous, is to do things for no reason, right? Is to be emotional and to kind of embrace. I'm not saying that that is all good stuff, right? Hypocrisy isn't something we should strive for, but it certainly isn't something that we can pretend doesn't exist or to outright dismiss as a, I don't know, as an idea that we should, it's wholly bad, right? There's a certain amount of hypocrisy that is even in some ways useful as utility, right? There's a certain pragmatic sense of, cognitive dissonance as an example of things that you kind of need to be true to you, even though they are maybe universally or socially false, right? And it's not because you're an idiot and can't see it. It's just that things are better for you, I suppose, in whatever subjective way, if you believe this as true, even though you know it's not. So I don't know. And a certain amount of that is unhealthy, I think. It's not like we have to fight against that wholly, but I think there's a certain, in the sense that we're trying to become more like robots, it seems a little foolish that we're trying to do that. And of course, we're going to make it easier for machines to act like us the more we act like robots. So I don't know. I guess to mix things up, I don't know, show me the humanity, right? Do something random for no reason, right? I'm trying to think what were characteristics of, I guess characteristics specific to humans, right? And this was kind of an idea around creating like an advanced CAPTCHA, because one problem I see of the myriad of problems on the web, but one particular technical problem with the web is human validation. Now, part of me thinks, what do we need to validate humans for? Now, like for data analytics and big tracking and all this other crap, we don't need to verify whether or not, like, let bots do their thing, whatever. But I think there's legitimate, like, maybe like healthcare data or something, where it's legitimate, like we would need to validate this is a human and not a bot scraping this. So as these large multimodal large language models get really, really good, even just with computing power alone, I don't even see, the software doesn't even have to improve. It can just be more hardware. You can just throw CPUs at the thing and it could get pretty damn good at these CAPTCHAs. So how do you validate something is human, right? It kind of, things need to be inherently like consistent, but also, I don't want to say random because computers can generate random noise, but like consistently irrational, right? Which is kind of a strange, but consistently humanly rational, because right, you can be randomly irrational, and randomly irrational is just, again, being random, which a computer is good at. You can now, again, you could argue about the randomness of computer, like randomly generated numbers by a computer, but for all intents and purposes, these randomness can be, modeled on a computer. But for validating a human, it would need to be like computationally driven, but yet like humanly irrational. I don't know. There's a whole thought I had around this, and I have a whole Word document of me just writing. Speaking of wasted time, I probably spent 4 hours or so that day thinking and writing about this like fake non-existent CAPTCHA system. And I did that, again, this is like a Tuesday or something, from like 4 to 8 or something. So prime working hours, I just wasted it all, again, kind of going down this rabbit hole of this. But to me, that was just such a more interesting problem than whatever else I was supposed to be doing. And I kind of feel shamed for doing that to myself, right? How dare I spend hours doing something of interest to me when there is work to be done, right? So I don't know. Either I need to reframe that as work or do it as some part of work, or I don't know, because you really only have a finite amount of time in a given day, in a given life. But I just think in general, allotting that is a task that we want to give to machines and be more machine-like, but it's also kind of antithetical and anti-human in that sense. But anyway, speaking of humans, I don't know, I'm on a weird human binge right now. I think, and this is just my opinion, this is also kind of brings the money part back into it. I think, I don't know, it kind of seems like a waste that so many humans are tasked with like their primary problem. And I say like most of their, I'll say computational knowledge, but I don't really think of it like a computer would. Most of their thinking, right, their human, cognitive efforts are spent in the realm of money, right? It's how do I make money? How do I money this? It seems like I'm not saying it's an entirely, it's a pretty dumb problem after a certain point, because there's nothing really new about there's obviously new ways to make money, and that's kind of in the space of entrepreneurship. So maybe that's an interesting route for some people, but still there's very known behaviors and facets and I guess principles of money making that aren't really novel. And it seems like a big waste of human potential that there are so many humans that are fixated on solved and trivial problems. Meaning like, okay, I need to make money. Okay, I'm going to get a job. It doesn't really matter what the job is. I just need to get money. But so then they spend like a enormous amount of their livelihood only thinking about, okay, well, I need to work, and it's like going to whatever their job is. And their job is probably not to sit around and think about what it means to be human or whatever. It's probably just to, I don't know, pack boxes or something like that. And of course you can kind of use your mind to go down different places, but you don't really produce, like you can't be painting or something or writing or expressing your human thoughts and things while you're packing boxes. It's your job to pack boxes. Even so, but so much of your, I guess, I'm not going to say free time, because time is, I don't know, self-prescribed in whatever way you're spending it, but so much of your time spent thinking as a human is thinking about money problems, which it seems like a waste of human potential. I'm not saying we should give everybody an unlimited amount of money and no one has to worry about money ever again. I just think that there are a lot of brilliant people that have to waste their brain just to make money. And it's unfortunate. And maybe I don't fit into the category of being smart enough to, I deserve to go pack boxes to make money or something like that. But certainly you'd have to agree that there are a significant portion of people that their potential is being wasted because they're too busy thinking about this dumb job. Because I look at like my peers and what they do on a daily basis, and I'm not saying that they should be. I am saying that their time should be spent thinking about different problems, because what they're doing aren't really problems. They're not really solving any problems. They're just they're doing the same shit just to make money. But I guess their problems that they're solving are just, how do I make money, or how do I contribute adequately to my 401k? And these aren't really interesting, or these are trivial problems, right? They're even artificial in some sense. I guess it's trivial in how you want to go about filling out your 401k, but it feels like a waste of human potential.
And I don't know, I just in aggregate with the amount of people that spend their entire lives fixated and with this problem of, okay, I need money. What's the next amount of chunk of money that I need for XYZ? It just seems like there are other more human things that they could be spending time doing, but instead they are spending time doing things that robots could do, which is, I don't know, something else. I'm not saying we should make robots do everything, but especially as we move in that direction, I think I said this before, but I think people's jobs will get stupider and stupider in terms of what they're tasked with doing, right? Already, I mean, if you work in a government position or with even just any kind of large organization, be it a university or whatnot, you are no doubt disheartened by the amount of just bloat. I don't even know what a better way to describe it, but just like inefficiency is surrounds you, and it's not really inefficiency in a way that is like, oh, we're wasting money. Obviously, they're wasting money, but it's a waste of human time because either we set up the system dumb or just it kind of needs this stupidity to operate, right? Without that, the bloat's already in the budget, so we have to spend 40 hours on this regardless. But anyway, I'm not want to go down that that whole thing. But the last thought I had about utility was speaking of relationships, and I think more specifically here, I'm thinking about like parent-child relationships and like teacher-student relationships. But it's and maybe I've been on one end of this, on a particular end of this. Let you guess, but it feels like often people are their mouths water at the perceived utility of this. And the quote I had that I just thought would be a funny bit of a, I don't know, a dystopian novel or something would be that their mouths are watering at the perceived utility of this perfect gear, right? So it's for all cogs in a system. Again, this is using that kind of cog in a system, which again, it's not saying it's a perfect analogy, but it's pretty comparable to many people's lives. They feel like that, whether it's wholly true or not. But they're not interested in you for anything beyond your utility or your usefulness as, I guess in this metaphorical sense, just being a gear, right? So you're looking at this gear and like, wow, what a perfect gear this thing would be. This is the ideal gear. We want this. We want to utilize it. But at what point do they value your humanity, or is it just your skills that are useful? So, like for example, I don't know, athletes are a good example of this because we love and we adore athletes only so long as they're good, right? Like we say, like Usain Bolt is this star, whatever. Let's say he breaks, or he breaks both of his legs. Okay, well, we're still going to like him because he's Usain Bolt and he's already broke the record and stuff. But what about the person that, would have been Usain Bolt, but that broke his legs before he won all of the medals or whatever? This guy is just useless to us now. Now he's some bum collecting unemployment. But we're really only interested in either of these people because of their utility. Now, Usain Bolt was useful for us for a certain period of time to win the gold medal or whatever, but now this other person didn't give us any utility, but maybe they were just as talented or whatever word you want to use to describe their abilities. But regardless, we were only interested in them in the utility. So it kind of makes me wonder with parents and with teachers and students, to what extent are they purely interested in our utility? Now, we would love to think that the parent-child relationship is this sacred bond and we just want, but in many ways, I think, and this is unfortunate, but there are many parents and things that their children are merely, and this isn't anything revolutionary, but are merely reflections of their own value, right? So it's not that they're like forcing their children to live through their own dreams, which that might be part of some of these things, but I mean, the parents themselves selfishly get value out of their children, because they're selfishly looking for value, so they don't. It's not really a selfless relationship at that point. There's nothing sacred about that. It's transactional as anything else, right? But the transaction is, the parents look better if their kid's not a bum, right? I mean, you think about parents, I think we've all talked to or seen parents who have like, some bum at home. And again, I'm using the word bum here pretty loosely, but you can kind of get the idea of whom I might be talking about. And it's not, I'm not saying that, in many ways, I'm saying the opposite of the bum is a bum. But the parents obviously have a shame. They feel shame and they want the kid to go get a job. I think of the movie Step Brothers. I just think of like, the parents were, and some of that is the reason they, and I assume that there's some sacred reason behind why they wanted their kids to have a better life. Because I don't know, the Step Brothers seemed pretty happy. They were happy when they were doing whole cans or whatever. But the parents, it felt it shined negatively on their reputation socially, having a quote unquote bum child. When maybe the child, again, child here might be a grown man who's 40, kind of is living their best life, punching with whole cans or whatever they were doing. I don't know I forgot what they were doing in the movie, but regardless, I'm not arguing in favor of bum children. I just think there's a argument to be made that the parents are ashamed of that, not because, it's because it reflects poorly on them. And I'm not sure how much I actually agree with that opinion. I just think it's something worthwhile to mention. But I'm really not sure if I totally believe and sympathize with my own opinion on that. So I don't know. Maybe I'll revisit it later. But either way, let's look at something else. Here's a rather weird idea I have. These are kind of random, but they always are. So I guess get used to it. The economy. Everyone's talking about how the economy's bad, yada, yada, yada. I was poor 5 years ago. I'm still poor, and I still plan on being poor. So that doesn't really bother me. I don't really care about the economy. Sorry if you have some investments doing terrible. Who cares? I don't. Anyway, I thought it'd be funny or interesting, or I guess interesting is probably the best word. If we made pennies were immediately worth $10. Now, my thought with this is that anybody who uses like change, rich people use cash because they have cash, but like who keeps pennies, right? Pennies are all over the floor. No one gives a shit about pennies. We can't buy anything with a penny. There's nothing you can buy with a penny. Anything that's being sold for a penny is being sold as a penny as a joke, or as it's just a meme or a joke or something. You can't even buy things for a nickel anymore. So nickels would almost be in the same category. Same with a dime and a quarter. Really, it's not even until you get to like, you might be able to buy like an eraser or a pack of gum or something, not even a pack of gum. You can buy one stick of gum for 50 cents. And even $1 is kind of useless now. But regardless, pennies. No one has pennies. No one cares about pennies. If they were immediately worth $10, I think obviously you'd be adding a bunch of money to the economy. But I think the distribution of which, it wouldn't favor rich people per se. I suppose the only people that would disproportionately benefit from this would be people who hoard pennies, right? Which, how many people do you know carry around sleeves and sleeves of pennies, right? And if nothing else, fine. Let's say some penny hoarder has a shit ton of pennies in their closet or something. Fine. Now they're a millionaire, whip-de-doo. But it wouldn't even be that much money. In order to be a millionaire with this new stimulus idea I had, you'd have to have a fuck ton of pennies, like a lot. I don't want to do the math, but a lot. I guess 0.001 divided by a million. But either way, you have to have a lot. I guess 10 divided by a million, so 100,000. But 100,000 pennies, that's a lot of fucking pennies to be a millionaire. But rich people don't hoard those pennies. These are just weirdos that have pennies. Poor people at least have, around their house, right? Their house is not clean because they don't pay cleaners and stuff like that. I'm speaking, of course, about myself here. So there's probably a bunch of pennies laying around, and that's, you can buy a few meals. That's rent, right? Bada bing, bada boom. You just got free rent, right? That's a pretty good stimulus bill. And the rich people who have super clean houses and only use credit cards and maybe only carry Benjamins, they ain't get nothing, right? They don't have pennies. Their pennies are all, I don't know, you threw them out or something. I just think it'd be, and you could also go around, here's the other thing I thought, homeless people that, they'd give them something to do. Obviously I'm not, in that sense, they kind of sound like cattle, but I'm not far from being homeless, but that's what I would do, right? I could go run around and find pennies, and I could have, you find 3 or 4 pennies, that's food for several days, which is pretty good. And they're all over the place. I see pennies walking all, like I was just, I think this idea came to me because I was walking on the road somewhere and I just saw a penny and I was like, yeah, no one's ever going to pick that up because it's a fucking penny. What are you going to do with that? Literally nothing. I was like, what if they're worth $10? It's an economy booster right there. And I'm sure there's some thing I haven't thought of that would ruin everything, or somehow the billionaires would make a bunch of, I'm just thinking of, I'm not sure, I can't think of a way in which the billionaires would profit a bunch off these pennies. Now, unless they had some incentive where it's like, we'll give you $11 per penny. I don't even know what they would even do to make money off this, but I thought it would be a interesting and democratic way of stimulating the economy for, whatever reason. But I don't really care about the economy. But anyway, I just thought it was an interesting thought experiment. Yeah. Let's see. Redundancy. That's another thing I can talk about. I am actively trying to reduce the redundancy in my life. Now, what does this mean? And this is actually maybe specifically technical. I don't want to say redundancy is like, oh, I have one friend. That's enough. I don't need any more than one friend because 2 friends is redundant. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm thinking mostly technically here. And obviously you're talking to a guy who has like a bunch of old ThinkPads laying around. And to some extent, I'm embracing redundancy in that. I guess what I'm thinking about is in terms of like software functionality. So, for example, I don't like my taskbar on my desktop. Windows taskbar and the Mac, they have all these, they got the weather and the Bluetooth and all. They got all this stuff. They have a gajillion things. The time in Unicode, the weather outside, my bank account balance. They have everything on this stupid bar. But there's already places I can find that information. And do I really need that right now? So like for the weather, for example, I don't need to be told like passively what the weather, if I want to know what the weather is, in my area, I can just look out the window. I already have a window, so that's my first weather app is the fucking window. The second would be the actual weather app, like I have on my phone that comes pre-installed because I can't delete it. Or I probably could, but I haven't figured out a way to do that. But why do I need it in my taskbar? Oh, I mean, what's like all it's gonna do is serve to distract me. And maybe I'm just someone who's super prone to distractions. And getting sidetracked on things, and all it would take would be to look at the weather and go, oh, what is this little, and then the next thing you know, I'm doing, who knows what I'm even doing next thing. Either way, I don't need that. I don't care. Even with the clock, I debated whether or not I should even put a clock on my computer. Like I'd have to have instead like a separate clock app, or to go to a browser and Google what time it is, something like that. Or not Google, but DuckDuckGo. Come on, we're done Googling over here. But I was like, that's probably overkill. But for like stuff like the weather app, I don't need that in my taskbar. I don't want that on all it's going to do is serve to distract me. That's not, and if I want to know what the weather is, I have a weather app and I have a window. I'll just go outside. And you might say, oh, well, what about the predictions? I can still go in the weather app and find predictions about the weather or what's going to happen this afternoon. I can still look that up, but I would do that in the app. It wouldn't even tell me. And how often do I need to know that information? All the time? Right, the time is something I may need to know all the time. Right, I need to know the time all the time because I have stuff to do and things are scheduled, and we kind of operate on this time, an agreed upon time. So things have to happen with certain times. But the weather, I'm not constantly like the weather is not the schedule for me. I don't need to know if it's raining or sunny or whatever the temperature is. And if I do, I'll look that up in the app. So I don't know. Some of it's just like kind of an effort to reduce the redundancy of things. So if I have something, I don't need 5 different calculators. I need one, right? And so I'm take the best of one, and then just use that instead, right? Instead of having a bunch of shitty half-baked calculators. Part of this is just maybe an extension of the Unix philosophy, which, if you're unfamiliar, is you do one thing and you do it well, which I really like. Now I'm not arguing against modularity as a whole, but in general, software always tries to do too much. One has these CRUD apps that have to do 80 different things, and they do everything pretty bad. And then you just have the shitty app, right? Whereas if you make like the best, I don't know, calculator app of all time, and you do nothing else, you just refuse to do anything. It's like, well, we can put the weather in the calculator app. We can put the time in the calculator app. No. It is a calculator. I don't need to know the time or the weather in the calculator app. So leave it to the weather app and the time app, right? And it's, I mean, apps are notorious for this like, I don't know, feature sprawl where they're just trying to do a gajillion different things and they do all of them poorly instead of just focusing on, what the calculator app needs to punch numbers well. Maybe it's, maybe you should add like if you're debating whether to add like a integral or a derivative or something to your calculator, sure, because that's still with the philosophy of the calculator is it needs to do math well. But you don't need the weather app in a calculator. It's a calculator. I don't want the weather on my calculator. I want the calculator to be simple. So that's why I prefer using the physical calculator. Now, granted, it is one of these graphing calculators because sometimes graphing things is necessary. I don't want the accountant's calculator, which is just that like 10 buttons or whatever, or more than that, but the 15 button calculator. But even so, I don't need a calculator that has internet access because I have a computer that has internet access. And there's nothing I'm gonna need to Google for my calculator. I can't imagine a situation in which I only have my calculator and I'm just desperate for immediate internet knowledge. When would that ever happen? Like I even see the same thing with like the Game Boy or I guess but not the Game Boy didn't have internet access, but like those like little Wii U tablets or the Nintendo 3DS. Why does that thing need internet? Why? Get a computer and go on the internet. Oh, we don't have a computer. You don't need to be on that. The point of that device is, in my eyes, just to play Pokemon, but to play the game. To play the game on the thing. You don't need a sole focus of that. It should do that well. You don't need a browser on a Wii U tablet or whatever they're called. I don't even know what they're called now, but why does that thing need to have that? Or a camera, for God's sakes. Why does it need a camera? Now, I guess there's games and things that use the camera, but not only is it just a horrible security feature in general, it's just you're asking it to be hacked, and you got kids using that too. It's a terrible idea, but why? It doesn't need to have that, right? I think too many things are trying to be too much when they just need to be simple. People need to embrace being simple, and I embrace simplicity. Simplicity is one of my tenets. When in doubt, if things can be simple, and not the Occam's razor side of it, where I just kind of glaze over everything and don't ignore the details. There are lots of situations where details become very, very important, but there are many more situations where details are irrelevant, and especially when it comes to, like, I don't know, working on something. What needs to be done? What actually needs to be accomplished? Not like what could be done. And I don't know. It's just maybe I'm someone that is very prone to. The hell is this thing killing me? Very prone to distractions and need to focus on simplicity. So, for whatever reason, I really appreciate it as an idea. I'm getting crushed right now. Okay. Anyway, all right. Let's look at my next thing. Here's my ideal superpower. And this is kind of a whole concept in itself, so I am certain that I will come back to this at some point because it is a very, very interesting idea. But what would be my ideal superpower if I had one? Now, obviously, I'm taking this question a bit tongue-in-cheek, so please bear with me as I get through this. But my superpower is the ability to do nothing. So my philosophy with the idea behind this is, what can you take from a person who can do nothing? And I don't mean nothing in a sense like I can just sit on my butt and watch Netflix or YouTube or whatever. I just mean someone who can truly embrace nothing. If I valued nothing and if I had no possessions, if I lived in all ways, shapes, and forms as nothing, there's no leverage anyone has. And even anything has, right? And even I guess taking this a step further, suppose that God is exerting power over me, right? But what if there's no value in I value nothing about my life or my existence? Take my legs. I don't need my legs. Take my money. I don't need my money. Take everything. There's nothing. I can be perfectly content doing literally nothing, or being dead, because that's kind of the truest form of nothing in terms of, I don't know, cognition. I mean, especially I'm thinking about this more not like in a material sense. I suppose very easily in a material sense, nothing is powerful, because if I don't own a computer, you can't sell me a keyboard. You can't sell me anything because I don't have it. I have nothing. There's nothing. So there's nothing you can sell me because there's nothing I need or have or want. And so because we kind of, we often just fill our senses with non-nothings and desire something instead of desiring nothing, we are prone to buying stuff and wasting money and yada yada yada. Which I'm not saying is, it's pretty bad, but it's not a blatantly horrible thing all the time, right? I think eating nothing is problematic. But if you were to eat nothing, no one could sell you food, right? So I'm not saying to eat nothing. The practicality of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the idea behind, if I ate, did, owned, what if thought nothing, then there'd be nothing, there'd be no leverage that anyone could exert. Now, part of this would be, it's kind of a power play in that sense, where if you're trying to, I don't know, retain your control or your power. I guess control is probably a better word. Power just makes me think about money or some kind of political leverage, whereas control is more accurate or subtle, maybe. But if you're able, people that are able to do, I mean, not that anyone can, but if you're truly able to embrace nothing and be content doing nothing, then you have control. And the moment that you desire something, or that you think of something that's not nothing, you then are ceding control to something instead of nothing. So that would be my ideal not saying it's like, I'm not saying in a practical sense. Obviously I'd pick like 3 lives or a genie, I don't even know, genie in a bottle or something, or $1 billion, but I'm thinking it'd be interesting to have a superpower of being able to do nothing. And I kind of wish in some sense that I embrace this on a lesser scale, meaning that I am able to do nothing more often. So one of the things I do, I guess you can kind of call it meditation. I don't really think of it that way, but for 10 minutes a day, I just lay on a surface. Doesn't have to be anything. Could be outside, although I don't really do it outside. Most of the time it's just on my floor, actually. And I don't have AirPods in. I don't have any, just nothing. There's no stimulation. I try to make it as quiet as possible, but I can't really control that. But the idea is to do nothing, is to actively do nothing, instead of like, some guided meditation, some kind of stimulation, because I think we're all so overstimulated. So I'm actively kind of practicing the act of doing nothing. Now, I don't know how, I'm not some cognitive behavioral scientist who's going to tell you how things work. I just think it'd be a useful skill to practice doing nothing, so that you're able to do nothing. And you see that many things that are something, which most people never think about nothing. They only ever think about things or some things. That there's real value in thinking about nothing, because there's a certain catharsis and control you have when there is truly nothing that you desire. And we kind of teeter with this idea a lot in our daily lives. It's not often that some wacko like me is clearly, explicitly stating that if you ate nothing, you would, or if you felt no hunger, if you had, I guess it's kind of Buddhist in some sense. But I'm not really thinking of it in a Buddhist sense. I'm thinking of it in maybe a more abstract, non-religious sense, because it's kind of like that Buddhism is more of a social strategy in some ways to deal with the problems of consumerism and whatnot. This is kind of an idea separate from whatever society has brainwashed you into doing or whatever. This is just kind of your own way of having control. So maybe it's just an individualistic idea that if you're able to do nothing and value and eat nothing, that you could feasibly have maximum control. So, but I don't know. It's kind of an interesting idea. So I don't know. I'm trying to get better at doing nothing. Now, of course, time is still going by. There's no way to stop that. So that's kind of something in some sense, but that's kind of a more abstract concept that I can't really, I don't know. So there's another book. This might be the last thing I talk about. This book that I just finished and I hated it. It was awful. I'm not going to cite it. Maybe I'll review it on my blog or something. I don't know. I'm making a blog, by the way. I'll like a full-fledged actual one. I'll share it later when I finish actually writing it, because I'm doing it from scratch. I'm not setting up a Substack or something dumb. Because I'm a Chad. I'm not going to waste my time paying somebody else to write code for me when I can learn and write code. It's a win-win. Anyway, what the hell was I talking about? Oh no. Oh, right. So I read this book on intelligence, and I just hate the idea of measuring it, because I feel like it's just always a flawed measurement. Always. Like, there's not, like, IQ. People don't realize IQ stands for intelligence quotient, and in its original form is literally just your expected age on some test divided by your actual age. So if you answered questions on the level of a 10-year-old and you were 5, you'd have a 200 IQ. Now, not only is the mathematics a little simple, but who's writing this test, right? Fallible humans are writing the test. And you can say, well, this test was tested by other humans. That's not a universal, it's a social measure of intelligence, right? So maybe if you framed IQ as a measure, not social in the sense of like how you interact socially, but your societal functional intelligence, because the language also plays a huge factor in these IQ in testing, period, right? What some languages are more concise, elegant, and clear than other languages. Some languages are super vague. So, and that all plays an enormous factor in how questions are perceived and answers. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that there's a way to justify 5 + 5 being 12 instead of 10, but I think testing in general is a very, very flawed concept, especially when we assign it to something like IQ. Now, it's obviously useful, but it is sinful in my eyes to use IQ to justify. They use it to justify like neutering people and to sorting people, and they in some ways sort people. They give people opportunities who score higher on these arbitrary tests, because they get university admittance. Now, granted, there are it's a lot more flexible now. You can kind of have no one really keeps track of those anymore, but the SATs and the GRE and all these are all just more kind of tests for tests. Tests of tests. They're not really actual measurements of somebody's intelligence. Because obviously there's this huge problem with being smart versus being like street smart. Book smart versus street smart, and people tend to think that it's like exclusive, and these people that are book smart and street smart are all of a sudden like these mega geniuses we should worship. Here's the key. Here's the secret about being book smart. I mean, meaning doing well in school. It's following directions. That's like 100% of in my educated view. Being book smart is literally just following instructions and writing your name on the paper. You would be shocked how good of a grade you can get by just literally just reading the directions and then doing what the directions say. There's no even thought involved. Most of these educational classes and degree programs you just follow instructions. So that's book smart. Street smart is more subtle. A lot of times it's social, it's communicative ability. There are things that people can't articulate, but they can think and know. But so measuring that is its own set of problems. But doing so like on a survey, or a self-assessment, or just taking a test, is also really dumb, because you don't know what's going on inside their head. Now, they could explain to you what's going on inside their head with words, but we know that that's a pretty terrible. That's a lossy medium, right? A lot of people can't articulate anything that they're thinking. I mean, listen to any one of these videos, and you're like, this guy is a moron, and maybe I am. I don't know, but it's not an accurate. A perfectly or even comparably accurate representation of what's going on in my head. That I can't really measure. I don't know. Now, again, I could maybe tell you that, this, when I was explaining this concept, it felt more right in my head versus when I was having trouble articulating this one. Sure, I could maybe self-reflect that, but that's never taken into consideration. All it is just what is the results of this test, it's not really measuring what's going on inside your head. People seem to miss that when you either speak words or you write them down, whenever you communicate, there's a loss, there's a drop off between what's going on in your head and what is said or what is written down. And what is in your head is what I think intelligence is, versus what is written down or what is said. It may be related to what you think. And in some cases, maybe there's a strong relationship there. But to think that it's exclusive and we can say that this person said this so they have this going on in their head, or this person wrote this down so they have this going on in their head, is a hilariously bad representation of what goes on in somebody's head. Because we don't fucking know. So, I don't know, it seems a little narcissistic of us humans to think that we can accurately measure intelligence and compare people by this and that. It just seems laughably bad that we choose to do that. So I don't know. The other part, I guess I'll discuss it next time. But I kind of want to get into this idea of intelligence in whatever sense that you might take that, versus this pursuit of wisdom, which I think is a much more interesting and yet vaguely defined, ill-defined concept, versus intelligence we kind of think as, book smart, street smart, whatever. But what is wisdom really? Is that just a culmination of specific intelligence? Is that just, I don't know. I tend to disagree on that front, but there's a lot more I want to talk about there. But anyway, I've rambled on for enough, and I need to get back into the groove of these things, because I was having trouble with that connection between my brain and my mouth, which is a very lossy medium, as I've already described. So anyway, part of the reason I do this is try to get better at that, to be able to more accurately share what is going on in my head with what is said out loud. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out.